What's the funniest joke you've ever heard?
Two guys are robbing a liquor store, and as they are clearing the shelves the first guy goes, "Is this whiskey?" The second guy replies, "Sure, but not as whiskey as robbing a bank." A guy sees an advertisement in a bet shop window, talking centipede £100. The guy goes in and buys it. He gets home, opens the box and asks the centipede if he wants to go for a beer. The centipede doesn't answer, so the guy closes the lid, convinced he's been swindled. 30 minutes later he decides to try again. He raises his voice and shouts, "Do you want to go for a beer?" The centipede pokes his head out of the box and says, "Pipe down. I heard you the first time. I'm putting on my shoes." My favorite one, because I told it to my 5-year-old who would then tell it to literally everyone. It's a two-parter. Why did the chicken cross the road? To see the idiot. Usually leads to confused looks, then followed up with knock knock. Who's there? The chicken. An engineer dies and ends up getting sent to hell. Engineers don't usually end up in hell very often, so the devil was rather surprised he was sent one. Hell is not a very nice place, the AC is broken, the pool has no water in it, everything is horrible. Over a period of time, the engineer starts to fix things. The pool is working, hell is cool because the AC system was fixed, roads are being rebuilt. Eventually, God looks down on hell and sees that people are actually enjoying themselves, contrary to what it's supposed to be. God meets with the devil and asks what is going on, and why he has turned hell into a decent place. The devil responds, "Oh, that engineer you sent us has been lending a hand and fixing up a lot of things, he is really doing wonders for the place." God exclaims, "What, engineers don't go to hell? That must have been a mistake. You have to give him to me to put in heaven." The devil crosses his arms and tells God, "No way, we like our engineer." God says, "I demand you give him back. Otherwise, I will be forced to sue you." The devil responds, "Well, where are you going to get a lawyer?" A woman is having a funeral for her husband when a strange man walks in and sits up front. Towards the end of the ceremony he turns to the wife and asks, "Would you mind if I got up and said a word?" She tells him by all means, and he stands up and says plethora and sits back down. The wife turns to him and says, "Thanks. That means a lot." Two priests are out driving one day when they get pulled over by a police officer. The cop approaches the priest's vehicle and says to the driver, "Sorry to pull you over, father, but we're looking for a couple of child molesters." The two priests look at each other for a few moments and have a few quiet words to each other. The driver turns back to the cop and says, "All right, officer, we'll do it. Jesus said to John, 'Come forth and receive eternal life,' but John came fifth and won a toaster." Two hunters are out in the woods when one of them collapses. He doesn't seem to be breathing and his eyes are glazed. The other guy whips out his phone and calls 911. When the operator answered, he breathlessly exclaims, "My friend is dead. What do I do?" The operator says, "Calm down. I can help. First, let's make sure he's dead." There is a silence, then a shot is heard. Back on the phone, the guy says, "Okay, now what?" A woman walks into a library and approaches the librarian. The woman says, "I'm looking for a particular kid's book for my son, but I can't remember the name." The librarian says, "Okay, can you describe it for me?" The woman replies, "It's an adventure book about Pavlov's dog and Schrodinger's cat." The librarian thinks for a minute and says, It rings a bell, but I'm not sure if we have it or not. Yesterday I got caught peeing in the pool. The lifeguard yelled at me so loudly I nearly fell in." Have you ever heard that joke about gaslighting? No? Yes you have. My grandfather has the heart of a lion, and a lifetime ban from the zoo. A teenage boy is getting ready to take his girlfriend to the prom. First he goes to rent a tux, but there's a long tux line at the shop and it takes forever. Next, he has to get some flowers, so he heads over to the florist and there's a huge flower line there. He waits forever but eventually gets the flowers. Then he heads out to rent a limo. Unfortunately, there's a large limo line at the rental office, but he's patient and gets the job done. Finally, the day of the prom comes. The two are dancing happily and his girlfriend is having a great time. When the song is over, she asks him to get her some punch, so he heads over to the punch table and there's no punchline. Two cannibals sat around a campfire. One said, "God, I hate my mother-in-law." His friend said, "Well then try the potatoes." Q. What did Cinderella say when she got to the ball? A. Gagging noises. What's the difference between a garbanzo bean and a chickpea? I've never had a garbanzo bean on my face before. Three old men are sitting on the front porch of a nursing home. One of them is 70 years old, the other is 80, and the other is 90. First one goes, "Gentlemen, I've got problems. I'm 70 years old and every morning I wake up at 7 and urinate. They give me meds for it but nothing helps." The second one goes, "Well, I'm 80 years old and every morning at 8 I wake up and move my bowels. Like you, all the meds in the world couldn't help me." Finally, the third one says, "You think you've got problems? I'm 90 years old and every morning at 7 I urinate, at 8 I move my bowels, and at 9 I wake up. My great-nephew called me just to tell me this joke. He's 5 and loves calling me to tell me jokes. What screen and says, 'I'm a talking frog.' A talking frog." He cracked up laughing and hung up. I love it when he calls me to tell me jokes. This one works better out loud to get the double meaning of typo versus typo. A priest, a minister and a rabbit walk into a blood bank. The rabbit says, "I think I'm a typo. Blind hookers, man, you really gotta hand it to them. So my boss walked in on me having sex at work and yelled, 'What are you doing?' I said, 'Well, she was just laying there. It's an autopsy.' Anyway, that was my last day as a veterinarian." A pirate walks into a bar with a steering wheel attached to the front of his belt. The bartender says, "Sir, why do you have that attached to your belt?" The pirate replies, "Ugh. It's driving me nuts." A skeleton walks into a bar. The barman says, "What can I get you?" The skeleton responds, "I'd like a pint of beer, and a mop." A cat and a dog are leading a caravan of pioneers through the old frontier. The cat was in charge of the front wagon. The dog was in charge of the tail wagon. Two boys are riding their bikes as a man driving a van pulls up next to them and shows them a giant bag of candy. The man says, "I'll give you some of this candy if you come in the van." One of the boys responds, "Gee mister, I'll come in your mouth for the whole bag." Certainly not the funniest, but I do think it's a good one. Why doesn't he pursues foul language? He kisses his mother with that mouth. This is a skit some guys in my old Boy Scout troop did, but I'll do my best to turn it into text. Narrator, it is World War I. The Americans and the Germans are fighting in the trenches. It's intense, with bullets and explosions flying everywhere, but no one can seem to hit anybody. But then the Americans decide to try a new tactic. American 1, "Hey, I have an idea. You know how a lot of Germans are named Hans?" American 2, "Yeah, why do you ask?" A1, "Watch this." Loudly, "Hey Hans." Hans, in the German trench, stands up, "Ja?" A2, bang. Hans flops back, wounded. N, wounded but not broken, the Germans retreat. The fighting resumes the next day, and once again no one can land a single shot. A2, "Hey, let's try what we did yesterday again." A1, "Okay. Hey Hans." H, stands up again, "Ja?" A2, bang. N, once again, the Germans are forced to fall back. The next day, the Germans are fed up with losing and decide to try the Americans' tactic against them. Hans, "Hey, you know how a lot of Americans are named Joe?" German 2, "Yup. Go for it." H, "Hey Joe." A1, "Is that you Hans?" H, stands up, "Yeah." A2, bang. Probably not the funniest joke I've ever heard, but my favorite science nerd joke. Heisenberg, Schrödinger, and Omar driving in a car when they get pulled over for speeding. When Heisenberg rolls down the window, the cop says, "Sir, do you have any idea how fast you were going?" Heisenberg replies, "No, but I know exactly where we are." The cop tells him, "You were going 15 over the speed limit." And Heisenberg says, "Great, now we're lost." The cop thinks this is suspicious, and decides to search the vehicle. When he opens the trunk, he finds a dead cat, and he exclaims, "Did you know there was a dead cat in here?" Schrödinger replies, "Well, I do now." The cop decides he's had enough and takes them both in, and he also gets Ohm for resisting.